Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Greatland Gold Annual General Meeting. Throughout this recording meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question given the significant attendance on today's call. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so. I'd now like to hand over to Chairman Alex Borelli. Good morning, sir.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nice cold morning, and welcome you to the Greatland Gold Annual General Meeting of 2022. Nice to see a few faces in the room, and the faces you might recognise at the front of the room are myself, Alex Borelli, as Chairman, have Sean Day, Managing Director of Greatland Gold. On my left is Clive Blatcham, Non-Executive Director. In attendance on visual is both Paul Hallam, Non-Executive Director, and James Wilson, who we refer to as Jimmy Wilson, who joined us as a director recently. Also in the audience, we have a mixture of our shareholders, advisors, brokers, and Stephen Ronaldson, who is the company's company secretary. So I welcome you this morning. As a quorum we have in place, so I declare the meeting open. And for facilitating the process, I will sit down. My apologies as a courtesy, but I think that's the order of today to do that. Right, so we start off with the formal meetings of the annual general meeting. The notice of the annual general meeting with its explanatory notes was sent to all shareholders on the 2nd of November, and a copy is available on the website and also with the registrars at the back of the room if you need a copy. The requisite notice of the meeting has been given, and I propose that with your consent, notice of meeting should be taken as read. Is that agreed? Thank you. I see a large number of nods, virtually and physically, so I'm delighted to continue with the meeting. We have 8 resolutions. Resolutions 1 to 6 are ordinary resolutions, which do require a simple majority to pass, which is 50%. Resolutions 7 and 8 are special resolutions, and they require a 75% majority for passing. We have all the proxies in place as well, with thanks to the registrars and for shareholders for submitting those. Resolution 1 is an ordinary resolution, and that's for the shareholders to receive the annual report for the year ended 30th of June 2022. We're required to present the report to shareholders at the AGM. Before the resolution is put to the meeting, may I ask if anybody has any questions on the resolution? Yes, sir. One question.
Good morning. I've got a question about shareholder value, as referred to on page 35 of the annual report 2022, where there's a line about the share price in relation to performance. And it says on page 35 that the share price on the 30th of June 2021 was 17.6 pence, and at the 30th of June it was 9.3 pence. That's a significant fall. And the explanation given is that the company's performance is still in the exploration and development stage. But my question is that, although I understand that the market sentiment towards the overall mining sector is low, there's been about 23 months of decline in the share price. That's a long time. And I'm wondering, given that there's been report after report on the drilling, excellent drilling results, and the growth of the resource at Hadron, how that reconciles? I mean, it doesn't seem to me to be something I can relate to. You know, we're having good information.
Yeah.
Share price fall.
Well, we would like to cover a certain amount of the value question at the presentation and the Q&A that Sean Day will be giving after the annual general meeting, and we're conscious that the duty of the shareholder of the board is to create value for shareholders. That the share price has followed the announcement of results we have all the way along the process, of course, was subject to the changes in the price of the metals and also the trading of shareholders in the company. I'd ask Mr. Day if you'd like to add to that or leave that till later.
Look, why don't we do that later? I've got a presentation, and let me address share price through that so we can get through the order of business first, and then that can be my first question.
I agree with that, but can I just make the point that when I was at the annual general meeting last year, the share price was very low then, and here we are a year later, and the share price is even lower. So I'm sort of coming on to these AGMs and finding that, you know, it's not a happy time. So looking to the future.
Well, we'll address, as I say, value a bit later, but there are more shares in issue, and the value of the company is substantial, as you'll appreciate. We've got about 5 billion shares in issue now.
Yes, but the value of the company at one time was 1.3 billion, and that was before all the extra shares were issued.
Yes.
So, as a long-term shareholder, without having the resources to increase my shareholding, I'm finding I've been diluted.
Yes.
And therefore, it's a pain I'm willing to accept, because.
Well, I think it's the case, you know, all shareholders who've had holdings over a period of time, but they've seen a huge increase and a dip recently. So we are focused on increasing the value of the company and increasing the value of the shares, which would mean the share price goes up. But it does take time to achieve that. It's not a short-term fix. We are developing the mine in conjunction with our...
Just bringing this up in relation to activity that's taken place.
Well, let us, your question is very good, and I'm a shareholder too, and I share your sentiments in that as well. So we will address that later, if we may, when we come to it. But thank you for your question. Any other questions in relation to resolution 1? Oh, sorry, I have to sit down. Back I go. There we go. Right. Well, I have proxies in favour of the resolution to the extent of 1,418,204,713, including votes attributed to the chairman's discretion. Against the resolution of 24,967,092, which is 1.7%. So we have 98.3% in favour of the resolution. And I would ask you to raise your hand if you are voting in favour. All those against? Thank you very much. I declare resolution 1 carried. And we will acknowledge your question. Thank you, sir. Resolution 2 is regarding the reappointment of James Jimmy Wilson as a director, who retires in accordance with the company's articles, and being eligible, offers himself for reappointment at this annual general meeting. Jimmy joined us recently with an outstanding career in the mining sector, and has joined us as an executive director and is making a significant contribution to the company. So the board has no hesitation in recommending that Jimmy Wilson is reappointed as a director of the company. Does anybody have any questions before I put the resolution to the meeting? No, thank you. I note that the proxies in favour of the resolution are 1,269,159,986 in favour, which is 87.8% in favour. Against the resolution, there are 176,452,074 against, which is 12.2%, and the 452,609 votes withheld. All those in favour of the resolution, please raise your hands. All those against? Therefore, a significant majority in favour. Therefore, I declare resolution 2 carried. And the board strongly welcomes Jimmy back to the board as a director. Thank you very much. Jimmy, you're with us, and delighted with your contribution. Resolution 3 is regarding the reappointment of Clive Latcham, who's sitting on my left, as a director of the company, who retires in accordance with the articles and offers himself for reappointment at this annual general meeting. The board has no hesitation in recommending Clive Latcham be reappointed as a director. Clive has been with us a number of years and has made also a significant contribution. The resolution will be put to the meeting. Before I do so, does anybody have any questions about Mr. Latcham? Nope, I see no questions. And the proxies we have in favour of the resolution are 1,227,745,312 in favour. Against the resolution, 216,124,669 against. That's 85% in favour, 15% against, and the votes withheld are 2,194,688. I would ask you to raise your hands to show your support to vote in favour. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those against? Significant majority in favour, so I declare the resolution carried and welcome Clive back to the business of the company as a non-executive director.
Thank you very much.
Terrific. Resolution 4 is regarding the reappointment of PKF Littlejohn LLP as auditors of the company and to act until the conclusion of the next annual general meeting, which is a standard resolution for the auditors. Does anybody have any questions before I put the resolution to the meeting? No questions. So I propose that the auditors, PKF Littlejohn LLP, are reappointed. In favour of the resolution, proxies received for 1,445,348,147 in favour, which is 99.96%. Against the resolution, 572,679, which is 0.04% against. Withheld votes, 143,843. So all those in favour of the resolution to reappoint the auditors, please raise your hands. Thank you. All those against? Significant majority in favour. I declare the resolution carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Resolution 5, sometimes combined with resolution 4, but we have a separate resolution for this, which authorises the directors to determine the auditor's remuneration. Does anybody have any questions on this before I put the resolution to the meeting? No questions. The proxies in favour of the directors determining the auditor's remuneration are 1,445,375,523 in favour, which is 99.97%, which is fractionally ahead of those in favour of the auditor's reappointment. Against the resolution, 448,487, and votes withheld, 240,659. So significant proxy voting in favour. I would ask you to raise your hands if you're voting in favour. All those against, please raise your hands. We have no votes against again, so I declare significant majority in favour and the resolution carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Resolution 6 relates to the general authority to issue shares. We cannot issue shares unless shareholders give us the authority to do so first. It's a very standard resolution that all listed companies put to their shareholders at annual general meetings, and we have the authority over 33% of the current issued share capital, which again is a fairly standard resolution and is in line with the general principles for the amount to which we can do that. This is on a pro rata basis to shareholders. We cannot issue shares on any other basis unless we have other authorities which are covered in resolutions 7 and 8. We have no intention currently of issuing any shares, but this gives the flexibility to the directors to continue the business of the company should we need to do so. I would ask if anybody has any questions in relation to the resolution. We have no questions. Proxies in favour, 1,432,912,017 in favour, which is 99.3% in favour. Against the resolution, we have 9,779,000 exactly, which is 0.7% of the votes. Votes withheld, 3,373,652. All those in favour of the resolution, please raise your hands. And all those against, no votes against. Therefore, I declare resolution 6 carried by the required authority, which is over 75%. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Two more resolutions. Resolution 7 gives the directors the authority to allot shares for cash without first offering them to existing shareholders in proportion to their existing holdings up to a fairly limited amount. This is a disapplication of preemption rights, and the amount as in accordance with the preemption group and their statement of principles is 5% of the issued share capital. So it's a modest sum, but it does give flexibility. That's the nominal value is £250,120. We have no current intention in issuing any shares for cash, but this provides us with a level of flexibility. And this authority expires at the conclusion of next year's, at the start of next year's annual general meeting, or within 15 months. Proxies in favour of the resolution are 1,436,872,459 in favour, which is 99.4%. Against the resolution, 8,082,037, which is 0.6% of the votes. Those withheld, 1,110,173. The requisite barrier we need to get to is 75%. As you can hear, the proxies in favour are significantly ahead of that. All those in favour of the resolution, please raise your hands. All those against? We have no one voting against. And therefore declare resolution 7 carried by the necessary authority. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Resolution 8 is another authority, which is a special resolution, again requiring 75%, and it is also in relation to the disapplication of preemption rights, and it gives the directors authority to allot shares for an acquisition or a specified capital investment as defined by the statement of principles within the governing guidelines. This is without offering those shares first to shareholders. And again, we've limited that to 5% of the nominal value, which is £250,000, 120. This authority expires at next year's annual general meeting within 15 months. We confirm our intention to follow the provisions of the statement of principles regarding cumulative usage of disapplication authorities within a rolling 3-year period, which is an important aspect of the statement of principles. But there would not be any usage in excess of 7.5% of the issued share capital without prior consultation with shareholders. This protects further dilution for shareholders and passes the voting over to you, on approval over to you, if we intend to issue more than that on a disapplied basis. The proxies in favour of this resolution are 1,437,714,036, which is 99.5% of the votes. You've probably got those behind me, but my duty is to read these out. Against the resolution, we've got 7,299,681, which is 0.5% of the votes, and those withheld 1,050,952. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? So overwhelming majority in favour, no voting against. And I declare resolution 8 carried by the requisite majority. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So that concludes the business of the annual general meeting. I'm sure you don't want to hear me anymore. The exciting part of the meeting is for me to pass over to Sean Day, Managing Director, who will give a presentation followed by questions and answers for you. And of course, we're all available after the meeting, and we will answer questions that arise on the website chat as well. So thank you for your interest, and I pass over to Mr. Day.
Do you want to close the meeting?
And I've got close the meeting.
So thank you, Alex, and thanks for people attending today, both here in Salisbury's house and online. But before I go on, I just did want to thank Alex Borelli. Alex has been the chairman since I arrived at the company, and as our shareholders are aware, we have 2 new directors joining shortly, Mark Barnabar and Elizabeth Gaines as chairman and deputy chair. And so Alex will be rotating out of the chairmanship role, but he's done a splendid job. I've certainly appreciated Alex's support throughout my time at Greatland, and although he's staying on the board, he really has been outstanding in terms of his guidance to me, the company, and chairing these meetings. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
With that, I have a short presentation, and really this is in part just to have a quick review of the year we have just completed, but but also I'll try to get through these relatively quickly with a view to opening up to the Q&A. We've already had one from the floor, but there's a number online as well. So it's been an incredibly, busy year, and I think really successful year for the company. Our core activity has been the development and the ongoing exploration at Havieron. That is doing very well. The exploration results we've got out of Havieron have been nothing less than outstanding, and that should give you confidence of the ongoing growth of that ore body. In parallel with that, the decline is being advanced. You've seen, we always talked about that Permian layer being very soft at the high levels, but as you get to depth, you have a better rock structure, and you're seeing the acceleration of that decline activity. So I think that's been a really important advancement through the year. We also had the 5% option process. That was a huge amount of work for the organisation. We had a joint venture that effectively allowed Newcrest to potentially acquire another 5% of our prize asset, Havieron, and a structure whereby they got to complete the pre-feasibility study, and that was the basis of the price determination. We did have a mechanism within that joint venture to take that to arbitration. That didn't involve lawyers. It was done in a very, relationship-based way with Newcrest. But we went through the arbitration process and really changed that outcome. We increased the value of that over 5-fold and ultimately kept that full 30% stake in Havieron. And that was the best possible outcome for the company. So we were delighted with that. We also went through a funding process. We raised equity. We had that cornerstoned by a number of funds, particularly Tribeca came in with that initial cornerstone, and then a second raising with a strategic investor in Wyloo. It's been a difficult market in 2022 to raise equity, but I think such was the calibre of our asset, such was the successful outcome we had with that option process, that we positioned ourselves to be successful in that endeavour. And then at the same time, in parallel, we brought in a new board, or at least augmented the existing board with Jimmy Wilson, who you re-elected today, and then Elizabeth Gaines joining as deputy chair, and Mark Barnabar, who will ultimately take over as chair. So all of that was incredibly important, and coupled with a debt piece, because we do care about the share price and we do want that to expand, to grow. And by having that debt piece in place, we effectively pay some of that development money with debt, and that leverage that you get should create a platform where the share price is given the best opportunity to grow. And really that, it's somewhat, to address the question from the floor, it has been a little bit disappointing that the share price hasn't recovered. We've actually had quite a tremendous August, September, say last 3 months. You've seen the Australian gold market actually pick up. You've seen the gold physical price go well. The Aussie dollar remains cheap, so Aussie dollar gold is looking outstanding. The value of Greatland has a lot of things that have improved. We've removed the uncertainty of the option. We've bought in a significant leverage piece with tier 1 banks and got funding. Coupled with that, we're into a strengthening gold market. So look, it is disappointing that our share price has not recovered. I think what we do as a management team and as a board is really focus on what we can control, which is setting the foundation which potentially does allow that share price to increase. And I think one of the reasons I'm in London this week is not just to meet, not just for the AGM. And as you are aware, we've also got a a town hall meeting tomorrow to engage with shareholders, but also to meet with institutions, because we do want to engage with shareholders and potential new shareholders and convey this message that we have a world-class asset, we have the funding in place, we have built a team, both at the board level and the management team, to optimise that value, and we think that creates an environment where that share price should increase. And we will also look at an Australian IPO, because if there is a market arbitrage where that Australian market is valuing Australian gold projects so much more highly, well, I think having the best of both worlds, keeping this really strong UK following, but also showing what the Australian shareholders will value it at, potentially, a rising tide might carry all ships. So with that, we really feel that we've made a lot of advancements over the last 12 months. Has that answered your question?
I've been to your town hall meeting, so I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate all the hard work that the company has been doing, you and so we do understand about, I understand about the legacy issues and other issues. I was just looking back over that period, 23 months, and I wanted to raise that as a shareholder, that it was an unhappy time, and obviously I do look forward to what you've been saying, where you want to see the company in the next 5 years, and that should lead to, as you say, a growth in the share price.
And thank you. And I think what I've said at that town hall meetings is we probably spent 18 months in a defensive ploy, where we've had to deal with this option. We were unfunded with an ongoing CapEx requirement, and we had to address those things. And Alex, the chair, mentioned about the number of shares on issue. I think when I joined, there was just over 4 billion on issue. There is 5 billion on issue now, but I think what we've achieved in terms of having raised about $200 million of equity through that, I think is really substantive, given the largest equity raising before I joined was about 4 million. So we really have transformed kind of our approach to doing things, and that is leveraged off the success we had in the past. Havieron is a discovery of Greatland, and we should celebrate the platform that has delivered the company.
Maybe touch a little bit on the support of Wailu's, the biggest shareholder now, and achievements with it and connection with Fortescue.
Yeah, look, we have a slide on that, so I might jump onto that there. But look, I think what I want to do is it's always good to orientate people around our strategy when understanding the company, and there's 3 pillars to our strategy, which is we want to deliver on an expanding Havieron. It is expanding in terms of getting growth with the exploration success, but also we feel the delay in the feasibility study to bring more resources and run more of the optimization processes allow us to see more of the value there at Havieron. We want to continue to invest in the drill bit, both at Havieron but also on the tenements around that. We also hope to drill Ernst Giles this year, which is a beautiful asset within the portfolio. And then finally, we want to put ourselves in a position where we can consider inorganic growth and bring another quality asset in the portfolio. I've talked previously about investing in the management team. That's probably another area where we will invest in, is bringing in a really good business development team to help us advance in that area. In terms of the progress itself this year, I mentioned that $390 million of debt and equity that we've brought in. Again, that makes us really well funded. We'd love to kind of finish this feasibility study, but we think with that access to equity and debt, we are very well placed to deliver our share of Havieron. The decline is really accelerating. It's up. It was at 916 meters at October. It's over a kilometre now. So that's a really important milestone for us, that we're over a kilometre of advancement there. And again, if you look through the quarters, you're just seeing that advancement get quicker and quicker every month as we get into more competent ground. And that resource growth is running about a 43% compounding average growth rate since our maiden resource statement. And if you have a look at what our results have been over the course of this year, your expectation should be that that will again grow by similar volume. And this is just some of those, little bit hard to see on the screen, but you've got everything there from 50 metres at over 11.5 grams plus copper through that southeast crescent zone, but also that eastern breccia. If you have a look at that grade kind of running from 3.7 down to 1.1 plus copper, that eastern breccia I think is a really big area for growth for us, both in terms of the volume of that area, but also the grade. 12 months ago, we were thinking of that as a 1 gram ore body. You're actually seeing the weight of that closer to 2 grams now. So I think that's really exciting for us. And we continue to kind of see the growth of that northern breccia and what we're now calling these pods, which is these high grade areas within that, which are giving us more and more of a corridor, a northwest corridor through that northern breccia area of good grade. Some of those key milestones for the year, again, we're just bringing in those new directors. Jimmy Wilson already sits on the board, has joined as an executive, attends a lot of our meetings with Newcrest, and we've had several workshops in the last couple of months across in Melbourne around the asset and around trying to the optimization of that, which has been really positive, both from our ability to contribute, but also the relationship with Newcrest. And Jimmy's been a tremendous asset in that room for those discussions. His background, as many of you know, ran several divisions at BHP, including the iron ore division. So an incredibly strong reputation. Got Elizabeth Gaines, who just recently stepped down as managing director of Fortescue, a plus $50 billion Australian company, plus has a background in private equity, so really understands value and growth. I think she's a tremendous asset to our board and will be joining as deputy chair. And then Mark Barnabar will be joining as the new chairman. He has background also as deputy chair of Fortescue, that $50 billion Australian mining company, sits on our Reserve Bank, the equivalent of the Bank of England, and also previously head of Macquarie's Global Resources Division. So just a tremendous, 3 tremendous additions to our board to complement Paul Hallam, Clive Lapcham, and Alex Borelli together with myself. Yeah, and look, I think it is worth mentioning that they are incentivised with out of the money options, and I think that's really good. There's lovely alignment there. It's 50% out of the money, maybe a fraction more right now, and they are going to be, as all the board is and the management team, incredibly focused on getting that share price up and creating value for shareholders. I think that we should celebrate that alignment. We also are looking at an ASX listing. I mentioned before, right now, especially over the last 3 months, you've actually seen a pretty good recovery in that Australian resources space, particularly the golds. These things can lag in different areas, but it'd be good to see that kind of get picked up in the UK market. But in the short term, I think we're going to be looking at trying to do an ASX cross listing, keeping the London listing, but also having a cross listing in Australia. And I think that can bring in Australian shareholders. Even if they buy and trade their stock in London, it will increase the mandate of Australian funds, which a lot have ASX mandate, so i.e. they can only buy stock on the ASX. By having that listing, they'll then be able to trade in our stock, and I think that could be really beneficial to us. We mentioned that the equity raise, I think that was extremely successful, both in terms of us being funded, in terms of bringing institutions onto the market and adding the credibility of having that institutional endorsement. And then we've also got Wailu coming in as a strategic investor. Wailu is one of the best known resource funds in Australia. It has a huge financial backing behind it, and they're a very supportive shareholder. They know Mark and Elizabeth particularly well, which I think is helpful, and I think was helpful in terms of us being able to bring them on as shareholders. But I think their backing really opens up us for the opportunity of being a good long-term holder of Havron, but also having the opportunity to expand beyond that. So we're really delighted to have Wailu as part of that shareholder base. The debt, this is a really good debt facility. 7 years, tier 1 banks, ANZ, Australia's largest resource bank, HSBC, who would be well known to here in London, but probably one of the world's largest banks, and ING, which has been very European bank, but very prominent in Australian resources as well. 7-year facility, $220 million, and no repayments for 12 months after project completion. So that is a very attractive product. And again, it's all about amplifying the value of equity, and at very competitive rates. Benchmark plus 3.5%, dropping down to 3.25% after project completion. So this is a world-class facility for a world-class project. Also, during the year, we completed our sustainability report. I think that's really important in terms of, again, expanding our reach into institutional investors. I talked about being successful about bringing in the Tribeca and the Wailus. All of them ask questions about ESG. Having that in place, having a swathe of policies in place about our approach to the environment, to welfare of staff, fit for work, are all important steps in showing our approach to ESG and the maturity of the company that put us in a better position to attract institutional money. And then finally, I've just got a couple of slides on the exploration side of things. We also, this year, we expanded our footprint through the Patterson area. We did a transaction through the year, which did increase that footprint. And we do see the Patterson as core to us, and we'll continue to look at opportunities to expand that footprint through the Patterson. In addition, we've been undertaking exploration, both obviously at Havron, on that Havron tenement itself, and we continue to have anomalies there that we want to follow up. But I think the prize there is up through that Scallywag area. It's a process, it's a multi-year process to test, methodically go through all those high quality anomalies, but we're really excited about that. And as we speak, we've got a rig spinning on the Rudel tenement just down to the south to it in that bottom corner of the map. So we continue to invest there, and we continue to look at opportunities to add to our footprint in the Patterson. And just to remind you, this is elephant country. You've got Telfer, a top 5 Australian gold mine for some 30 odd years. You've got the Rio Tinto Winu asset up in the north, and then you've got our own Havron deposit there as well. So when you get onto something there, they can be extraordinary deposits. This is our exploration portfolio, and what you'll also see here is this is a bit shorter than it was a week ago. So we did divest our Tasmanian assets. I had flagged that we were looking at doing that, and we ran a process. We're really delighted. Again, another successful process we've run this year. We engaged with a number of counterparties, and we're really happy with the caliber of the counterparty. It's a entity, Flynn Gold, which is focused on Tasmanian gold. They will be a good owner of those projects. We found them easy to deal with. We like dealing with them. but also we have an ongoing exposure to that asset, both in terms of milestone payments and also a royalty. And royalties are quite liquid and tradable if we want to deal with that in due course. I think they're good assets. They don't quite have the scale we think to sit in a portfolio next to Havron. And also, given our other assets were in Western Australia, it was becoming a logistic challenge for us to get geos across to Tasmania efficiently. And through COVID, we weren't out there. We haven't actually drilled in Tasmania for 3 years. So we made a decision to divest that. And I'm really pleased. And as I said, I think the best thing is that we have an ongoing exposure to them. So overall, look, I'm keen to get into the questions, but overall, look, I think we have a world-class deposit there with Havron, with high-grade gold copper. It continues to expand. It's already at 6.5 million ounces and growing at good grade. We have a tier one partner in Newcrest, and we're leveraging their skill and also their ability to expedite. So before the pre-feasibility study, and certainly before the feasibility study, we've already got the decline about half complete. So that will accelerate our time to opening up this to the Havron asset. We can leverage. Excuse me. A little bit cold walking in this morning, but that we can leverage that the existing infrastructure there with Telfer and also what's already at surface at Havron for this low capex pathway to and low risk pathway to development. We are funded both with that debt and the equity that was spoken about, and we still have this tremendous exploration portfolio. We'll be drilling, we'll continue to drill at the Patterson, and as I said, the Ernst Jal asset we expect to get on this year. It's just subject to us kind of finalising the access agreement with First Nations, but we'd certainly like to do that, and we also have a grant to do that, so we're really incentivised to make sure that happens this year. So we have a strong platform. We're orientated to growth, both at Havron and more broadly in our portfolio. We're going to invest in that and put the centre of gravity of our team at positioning ourselves for growth. And let's see what we can do to leverage this platform. We have an amazing platform, but I think the best of Greatland is ahead of it. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. I'll just give the room another opportunity to ask a question before I jump to the online. Okay, we'll move to the online Q&A.
That's great. Thank you, Sean, and thank you to the board for your updates this morning. Sean, we have received a number of questions from investors during today's presentation. So firstly, thank you to all those attendees online that have submitted their questions. And maybe if I can just try to cover a few of these off. The first one reads as follows: when do you confidently expect to reach the bottom of the decline?
We expect that to be in the March quarter of 2024. So just over 12 months away to first ore.
That's great, thank you. If I may turn to the next question, NCM tend to release ore reserve updates in mid-Feb for half-year results. Is this also a likely date for the Havron DFS, given expectations of a larger resource feeding into increased LOM?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I've spoken with Newcrest around this. The strong preference of Greatland is to release its updated resource and reserve reports with Newcrest each year. You are correct that Newcrest typically release their updated resource in around the end of February each year for their universe of assets. Our expectation is that Havron will be part of that, and that is our strong preference. Albeit, if that was not the case, as we did in 2022, we would undertake to bring out our own resource on Havron, because we have a team that can do that. And I think what was tremendous in 2022 is when we did release our own resource, And then Newcrest came out with theirs in about July 2022. It was lovely verification of the work we did. They were within 1% of each other. So I thought it was a great feather in the cap of our technical team that we produced the same outcome. And we should produce the same outcome because we're using the same methodology on the same asset, using the same drill results. So again, I think people should have confidence that whether we release it or hopefully it's done in parallel with Newcrest, that there'll be an updated resource and reserve in the new year.
Thank you, Sean. The next question reads as follows. Many of us were pinning the change in fortune of the share price to the issue of the FS. It has now been pushed back. When can shareholders look forward to seeing an FS being issued?
Look, I think when you look at the comments out there, we'd expect it in the June quarter of 2023, so say 6 months away. But I think we should be pleased. One of the concerns Greatland had of the feasibility coming out in December was that the drill cutoff was November 2021. That was 13 months. So we were going back in time to view the asset, an extraordinary extent. So I think having an updated resource and a much larger resource as the cornerstone for that feasibility study, I think is positive. And there's a number of optimization studies being done. So I think a better feasibility study is a better outcome. More is more. So I think we are not uncomfortable that Newcrest felt, and it was discussed at the joint venture, that they could do a better job with more time.
Thank you. Taking the next question from Nicholas. Thank you, Nicholas. He says, good morning. It's my understanding that assay result times in the Patterson should be improving, but haven't seen a definitive sign of this yet. Could you please give your best estimate as to when we can expect the next assay results from Scallywag?
Yes, well, let me answer that in two parts, Nicholas. Assay times are coming down. We are seeing improvements there. There is both getting the assays and the interpretations. I would expect we will get some assay results, if not before Christmas, certainly in January. So that we've got some reasonably shortly ahead for us.
That's great. Thank you. Stuart asks, while Havieron is the jewel in the crown for Greatland, please elaborate on the company's thoughts on Scallywag and the findings to date. I know you've marginally touched on that, but if there's anything further to add.
Yeah, thank you. Look, so Havieron is certainly the jewel in the crown. It's a confirmed, large gold copper deposit. But the best place to look for gold and copper is where it's already been found. The structures through that Patterson typically run in that northwest orientation. Scallywag is directly along strike and on structure of Havieron. There are a large volume of geophysical targets across that Scallywag. I think it's really important to rank those in order and as part of the discipline of a geological team. But personally, I think it's always hard to really rank those deposits. So there's no replacement for systematically working through that. And I think I've described before that we use a very technical driven approach to the exploration. It is 1 or 2 holes in an anomaly. We better understand the stratigraphy. We compare it to what our expectations were. We recalibrate and then we go back to that deposit. So we don't go in and pattern drill heavily any of these anomalies. We go in, we understand it better, we recalibrate, and then we might end up saying, look, we need to be drilling 200 meters further to the north or similar to better hit that target. And what we try to do is not walk away from a target until we believe we can explain it. Once we can explain an anomaly, then we feel we can walk away. So it is a very systematic, a very technical approach, but that's how we found Havron, and I think we are very respected within within geological circles for that approach. And I think testament to that is that Newcrest continues to allow us to run that jury joint venture. And if we've seen over the last 2 years, that is not the Newcrest typical way. They normally, and including across the Patterson, have taken back control of joint venture, the manager role of joint ventures as they have become available to them. With jury, they continue to allow our team to run that. I think that's multifactorial. I think we are very good at getting a large amount of the money that we spend on that joint venture into the ground. Secondly, that technical discipline I mentioned. And thirdly, we're really collaborative with them. We have a good relationship with Newcrest and we try to work cooperatively with them. But I think it is testament to us that they do allow us to continue to run that exploration program. And we're really excited about what sits across those Patterson tenements. But Scallowag is certainly our favourite there.
That's great, thank you. Turning to the next question, is Greatland in a position to provide an update on progress regarding its ASX cross-listing? Is it still anticipated that this will be a compliance listing and not an IPO?
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think that the update, which I mentioned briefly, is we'd still like to do this in the first half of calendar 2023. So typically that's around a 4-month process. So say, so I think probably that June quarter is the most likely. Right now that is expected to be a compliance listing. But as I said, I think once you have the listing there, then you fall within the mandate of more investors. And those institutional funds will typically buy on the deeper market. So regardless of whether we issued shares in Australia or not, what would likely happen is the volume of trade is certainly going to be higher here in London. So what would be allowing those Australian institutions to come here and trade and buy in London. And that's really the idea, isn't to issue shares there in Australia necessarily, but is actually to have them come across to London and buy positions here on the liquid London market. So that is the opportunity for us. And I think right now there does seem to be some observed improvement in the sentiment in the Australian gold. And certainly that gives us a bit of an opportunity to, for investors to see value with Greatland.
Thank you, sure.
Issue shares.
Yes.
That's great, thank you. Let's turn to a question from Simon. Thank you, Simon. Great to hear the news around upcoming engagement with shareholders and prospective institutional investors. Would this also merit or include engagement with JPM, who are registered as shorting our stock, to understand why and encourage them away from this strategy, which clearly has had a significant impact on the share price over the last 18 months?
Yeah, thanks. So look, I am here in London this week to catch up with shareholders and institutions, both existing and potentially new institutional holders. It's my last trip up here before Christmas. I don't believe JP Morgan is on the itinerary. I'd be delighted to meet with them. As you say, I think the shorts guy are often kept in a pretty dark cellar in some of those organisations and don't necessarily meet with that many shareholders. That said, I'm not 100% sure JP Morgan has a large short position presently. I think it's about 0.5%. And when they bite that back, that will be positive for us. So it is a shame that they took that position, and I'd certainly welcome the opportunity to meet with them, but no, they're not on the itinerary presently, unfortunately.
That's great. Thank you. Turning to Paddy, hi, Sean. You mentioned in your presentation that you were hoping to bring a high quality, non-organic asset to the portfolio. Would that be another exploration asset, or would you be looking at a producing asset? That's from Paddy.
Thanks, Paddy. I think the way I'd like to describe that is an asset with a clear pathway to cash flow. So potentially that can still be an exploration or development asset as opposed to an asset in production. But I think a clear pathway to cash flow would be most important. That doesn't mean we wouldn't still add exploration assets. As I said before, I think assets in the Paterson are of great interest to us. I think other assets, the caliber of an Ernst Giles, would certainly be of interest to us, notwithstanding that is an exploration play. But equally, we do have a genuine interest to bring another, high quality asset to sit alongside Havron. And what I'll also say there is one of the things we're looking at is continuing to build that team with some people with a business development focus, so that we can put time, energy, and effort in to positioning ourselves for this growth.
Thank you. Just taking a few more questions here. One from Stephen. On your slides, funding is described as in place based on the PFS, which was based on the drilling at the end of 2021. What are your thoughts regarding Greatland's funding position based on the FS, as best as you understand it at present, given you would be aware of the drilling success as we are today?
Yeah, thanks. In terms of the drilling success and making the ore body bigger, that should not have an overwhelming effect on CapEx. You've still got only one haul road back to Telfer. You've only got a single decline. What might happen is you'd put more working capital in with opening up additional development levels. The feasibility study the PFS did tell you that the feasibility study was going to move from 2 million tonnes per annum to 3 million tonnes per annum. That would likely have more overtaking lanes, some more ventilation, more development levels in your development. So you would see some increase, but I think those core pieces of CapEx, processing plant, haul road, and decline, would all be relatively unchanged. So I think, we think we're very well placed, and we have a really strong buffer between what was described as the CapEx requirement under the PFS and what will be under the feasibility study. But again, we'll if there are opportunities to improve it and make it better, they will perhaps be celebrated. But we think we're really well positioned.
That's great, Sean. I am mindful of time, and I know that we have a hard stop at 9:30 online. So maybe just a couple more questions. And of course, thank you once again to everybody online for your engagement. And we will make sure the company have visibility of all of the questions that maybe we haven't touched upon, although I know a number of them are of a similar nature. So I think we've covered off quite a few of those topics. But maybe to finish up with a couple of questions here. The first one reads, will Greatland be issuing their usual interim exploration report at some point this week?
Look, we do have that 6 to 7 week cadence. I don't think it's due this Thursday, but we do have an upcoming exploration update coming up, and we maintain that cadence. For good order, I note that Newcrest has moved out to a quarterly exploration update, but we really appreciate that they cooperate with us still doing the 6 week cadence. Again, a reflection of a good relationship.
That's great. And then maybe finally a question from James. James says, Sean has previously mentioned that we may be vulnerable to Newcrest. Given the feasibility study may be issued around June 23, are you concerned at all about a takeover attempt in the short term?
Yeah, look, in truth, I am. We have a world-class ore body it continues to be de-risked as that decline is advanced. And we've had some share price weakness in a rising gold copper market. So yeah, look, it is a concern. I think what we want is the market to give us time to really show the full value of Havieron, and indeed to unlock some of that exploration potential both in Havieron and around it. So we are concerned and maybe a little bit vulnerable right now. So which is a shame. But the best thing we can do to fix that is to increase our share price. And of course we have a really large partner that has some great advantages with us, but it does make sense that Newcrest would want to own 100% of good, high quality assets, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to own 70% of an asset. So yeah, I think we are in a slightly vulnerable position. Having said that, I think all the things we've done, such as put in the debt piece, bring in strategic shareholders, and build the team, give us a better platform to optimise the outcome of any of these of such an event. But what we focus on again is what we can control, which is developing Havieron well, continuing to invest in that drill bit, and looking to augment our growth potential.
That's great, Sean. Thank you once again. Thank you to all the investors on today's call and attendees on today's call that have submitted their questions. And if we haven't gone through your questions, obviously, as we said earlier, we'll make those available to the company, and any other responses will be published on the Investor Meet Company dashboard. Sean, I know that investor feedback is particularly important to you and to the board, and I'll shortly redirect the attendees on the call, the significant number of attendees on today's call, to give you their thoughts and their expectations. But perhaps before doing so, if I may, Sean, just ask you for a few closing comments, and then I'll send investors for their feedback.
Look, just in closing, I'd just like to thank everyone for tuning in. Your support and interest is really appreciated. And just again to thank the board for their support, and the incoming directors as well, both Jimmy, who started a couple of months ago, but also looking forward to welcoming Mark and Elizabeth in due course. So thank you, everyone. And then finally, I do have a town hall on tomorrow in the city. So if anyone wants to come along to that, it's a slightly less formal process and normally goes for an hour or so afterwards with sandwiches and drinks. So lots of opportunity to ask questions there. But thank you, everyone.
That's great. Sean, and to the board of Greatland Gold, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please ask you not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the board can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the board of Greatland Gold PLC, we'd like to thank you, both those in person and those online, for attending today's annual general meeting. Good morning to you all.